The sun rose gently over the small village of Okodo, painting the sky with soft orange light. Children ran barefoot along the dusty paths, chasing each other's laughter. Women carried calabashes of water on their heads, while men sharpened their cutlasses for the day's farm work. Life in Okodo was peaceful, and everyone respected the traditions of their fathers. At the heart of the village stood a small mud-walled church. Its bell was cracked, but still it rang every Sunday morning, calling people together. The church was more than a place of prayer. It was where disputes were settled, where songs of joy echoed after a good harvest, and where the villagers felt safe under the guidance of their pastor, a tall man called Pastor Bamadil. Pastor Bamadil was loved by many. He wore simple white robes and always spoke with a gentle smile. To the people he was not only a man of God but also a father, a counselor, and sometimes even a healer. When a child fell ill, people rushed to him for prayer. When a couple quarreled, he spoke peace into their home. When rain delayed, his prayers were believed to bring clouds heavy with blessings. Among the villagers was a young woman named Adunni. She was bold and curious, never afraid to ask questions that others swallowed in silence. Unlike the others, Adunni sometimes wondered if things were always as they seemed. "Why must we depend on one man for all answers?" she once asked her mother. Her mother hushed her quickly. "Be careful with your tongue. The pastor is God's chosen." Still, Adunni could not silence the small voice inside her heart. She respected the church but believed true faith should bring light, not fear. And though she was young, she noticed that lately, the joy in the church seemed to fade. People whispered more than they laughed. They obeyed the pastor, but with tight lips and worried eyes. One evening, after a long day at the farm, Adunni sat under the giant iroko tree in the village square. Old Mama Ayabo, the village storyteller, was gathering children around her, ready to spin her nightly tales. But instead of her usual cheerful voice, Mama Ayabo sighed deeply before speaking. "My children," she said, "in every season of peace there comes a shadow. A snake may wear bright colors, but its bite is still poison. We must all learn to watch with both eyes, even in the house of God." The children looked at her in confusion, but Adunni felt her chest tighten. She sensed Mama Ayabo was not speaking of fairy tales this time. The next morning the church bell rang, but its sound was different. Long, heavy, and almost sorrowful. People gathered quickly, wondering what message awaited them. Pastor Bamadil stood before them with his usual calm face, but his eyes darted like a man hiding something. He raised his hands and spoke. "My children, the Lord has shown me a vision. A great curse threatens this village. Unless we obey his command, evil will swallow us." Gasps filled the church. Fear spread like wildfire. But Adunni frowned. She remembered Mama Ayabo's warning the night before. What kind of vision had the pastor seen? And why did he look more fearful than faithful as he spoke? The villagers leaned closer, trembling, waiting for his next words. And that was when Pastor Bamadil revealed something that would shake the very foundation of Okodo. The church was so silent that even the buzzing of flies could be heard. All eyes were fixed on Pastor Bamadil as he lifted his hands high above his head. His voice shook, but it carried a weight that pressed on everyone's chest. "The Lord has told me," he said slowly, "that the curse will strike unless each family brings their firstborn child to the church at midnight. These children must spend the night on the altar, and only then will the evil pass over our village." A loud cry broke out from the crowd. Mothers clutched their children tightly. Fathers exchanged fearful glances. No one dared to question him aloud, for they had always believed his words carried divine truth. But Adunni's heart pounded. She stared at the pastor, her mind racing. How can a God of love ask for the fear of children, she thought. Yet around her, she saw even the strongest men trembling, nodding, and whispering their agreement. That evening, the village fell into heavy silence. Children who once played in the square were hidden behind locked doors. Mothers wept as they bathed their little ones, whispering prayers of protection. Fathers sharpened sticks and knives, not for hunting, but as if preparing for a danger they could not name. Adani, however, could not sleep. She walked to the hut of Mama Ayabo, the old storyteller, hoping for wisdom. The old woman sat by her clay lamp, weaving a mat. She looked up, her wrinkled eyes sharp and knowing. "You have come," Mama Ayabo said, as though she had been expecting her. "Your spirit is troubled." Adani nodded and told her everything, the pastor's command, the fear in the village, and her doubts. Mama Ayabo listened quietly, then leaned closer. "My child," she whispered, "there is a difference between a shepherd who protects and a wolf who wears sheep's clothing. Not every voice in the church is the voice of God. If a tree asks you to cut off your own roots, will it still stand?" Adani felt a chill run through her. The old woman was right. Something about the pastor's command was wrong. But who would believe her? The next day, Adani tried to speak to her friends. "Do you not see?" she asked. "This cannot be from God. A true leader does not put fear into the hearts of children." But her friends silenced her quickly. "Hush, Adani. Do you want curses to fall on us? If the pastor hears you, he may say you are the cause of our troubles." That night, as the moon climbed high, families began to gather near the church. Their children were dressed in white wrappers, trembling as their parents pushed them forward. The altar glowed with candles, and Pastor Bamadil stood tall, waiting. Adani watched from the shadows, her fists clenched. She knew something was terribly wrong. Then, as she looked closer, she saw the pastor's eyes gleam, not with holiness but with hunger. And in that moment, Adani realized the pastor's command had nothing to do with God at all. But before she could warn anyone, she saw him reach for the first child brought forward. The entire church seemed to hold its breath as Pastor Bamadil stretched out his hand toward the trembling little boy on the altar. The boy's mother sobbed uncontrollably, but she dared not resist. The pastor's shadow, cast by the flickering candlelight, looked like that of a giant devouring beast. Adani's heart raced. She wanted to scream, to run forward, to snatch the child away, but her legs felt nailed to the ground. Everyone around her knelt, bowing their heads as if this was holy. But she saw the truth. This was no act of God. Then, Pastor Bamadil began to chant. His voice was low at first, then grew louder, strange words rolling from his tongue that no villager had ever heard before. The flames of the candles shook, and the boy whimpered. Adani noticed something else. At the corner of the altar, hidden beneath a cloth, was a small wooden box. From where she stood, she could see faint red stains on it. Her stomach turned. What had this man been doing inside the church all along? Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder echoed across the night sky. People gasped and held their children tighter. Pastor Bamadil raised his hands higher and shouted, "You see? Even the heavens confirm my vision. Whoever disobeys me will bring death upon us all." The villagers, already trembling, fell flat on their faces. Fear gripped them so tightly that even the fathers who normally stood strong could not move. But Adani's fear turned to fire. She knew the pastor was twisting their faith. That night she made a decision. She would not let him harm the children. But how? She was only one girl against a man who had the whole village under his spell. The next morning, Adani went secretly to Mama Ayabo again. She told her everything she had seen, the strange chanting, the box with stains, the way the pastor's eyes shone. Mama Ayabo sat in silence for a long time, then finally spoke. "There is something the people of this village have forgotten," she said. "A church is made holy by the hearts inside it, not by the man standing at the altar. If one man turns the altar into a trap, then we must find the courage to break it." Adani frowned. "But how, Mama? No one will listen to me." The old woman leaned closer. "There is a way. The sacred drum of Okodo. Long before this church was built, our ancestors kept the drum hidden in the forest. It was beaten only when danger threatened the whole community. The sound of the drum shakes lies and reveals truth." Adani's eyes widened. She had heard stories about the sacred drum as a child, but most thought it was only a legend. Could it truly exist? Mama Ayabo nodded firmly. If you can find the drum and beat it before the next midnight gathering, the truth will come out. But the forest is not kind. You will face trials that test your spirit. Still, it is the only way to save the children. Adunni felt both fear and determination rise in her chest. She knew the task would be dangerous, but she also knew she could not stand by and watch her people fall into the hands of a false shepherd. That evening, as the village prepared for the second night of sacrifice, Adunni slipped away quietly, carrying only a small lantern and her courage. She stepped toward the thick forest, where the cries of owls echoed and shadows stretched like hands reaching for her. With every step, she felt the weight of her decision. The safety of the children, the peace of her people, and the truth about the pastor all depended on her. But as soon as she entered the forest, she heard a rustle behind her. Someone was following. She turned slowly, holding up her lantern, and froze when she saw who it was. Adunni's lantern trembled in her hand as the shadow stepped into the dim glow. Her breath caught. It was not a wild animal. It was Kihind, the son of the village blacksmith, and one of the few boys her age who was never afraid to speak his mind. He raised his hands quickly. "Don't scream. It's only me." Adunni lowered the lantern but kept her eyes narrow. "Why are you following me? Do you not fear the forest?" Kihind looked serious. "I saw you leave the village. I know where you're going. You're looking for the sacred drum." Her heart skipped. "How do you know about that?" Kihind glanced back nervously. "My father once told me. He said the drum is hidden beyond the stream, guarded by trials. He warned me never to seek it unless the whole village was in danger. And Adunni, isn't that what we face now?" For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Adunni nodded. She could no longer carry the burden alone. Together, they stepped deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, and the path became harder to see. Branches cracked under their feet, and unseen creatures rustled in the darkness. Every sound seemed louder, sharper. But Adunni kept reminding herself, this was not about her fear. This was about the children. After what felt like hours, they reached a stream glowing faintly under the moonlight. The water rushed fast, and there was no bridge. On the far side, an ancient carving of a drum stood etched into a rock. It was the first sign they were on the right path. Kihind stepped forward. "We must cross." Adunni shook her head. "Wait." The old woman said there would be trials. No sooner had the words left her mouth than the water began to churn violently. Out of the stream rose a figure, tall, dripping wet, with eyes like fireflies. Its body shimmered like water itself, and its voice rolled like thunder. "Who dares seek the drum of Okodo?" it demanded. Adunni's knees weakened, but she forced herself to speak. "We seek it to save our people from lies." The spirit's eyes glowed brighter. "The drum does not answer to cowards or selfish hearts. To cross this stream, one of you must leave behind what you hold most dear." Kihind and Adunni exchanged a frightened look. "What does it mean?" Kihind whispered. The spirit pointed at them. "Choose. Sacrifice something you cannot live without, or turn back and let your people perish." Adunni's mind raced. She thought of her late father's amulet, which she wore always under her wrapper. It was the last memory she had of him, her only comfort when she felt alone. Her chest tightened. Could she really give it up? Kihind reached for the small hammer he carried everywhere, the one he had forged under his father's guidance. His pride and his future as a blacksmith were tied to it. He clenched it tightly. The spirit's voice boomed again. "Choose now." Adunni's hand moved slowly to the amulet at her neck. Tears filled her eyes, but her heart told her this was the price of saving the children. She pulled it off and held it out toward the water. The spirit's hand of water reached forward and took it. Instantly, the stream calmed, and a shining path of stones appeared across the water. Adunni's heart ached as the spirit sank back into the current, taking her father's amulet forever. But Kihind put a hand on her shoulder. "You have given much," he said softly. The village will not forget this. Together they crossed the stream. On the other side the forest grew thicker. Strange whispers echoed around them, and the air smelled of smoke though no fire burned. Every step felt heavier, as though the forest itself wanted them to turn back. Then suddenly out of the shadows a tall figure appeared, a trickster dressed in tattered clothes with a crooked grin. He blocked their way, spinning a long staff in his hand. "You think you can find the sacred drum so easily?" the trickster sneered. "Not without answering my riddle. Fail, and you will wander this forest forever." He leaned forward, eyes glinting. "Here is my riddle. I eat everything, yet I am never full. I drink everything, yet I am always thirsty. What am I?" Adani's mind spun, and Kihine's fists clenched. The forest grew darker around them, waiting for their answer. The trickster's crooked grin widened as he leaned on his staff, his eyes glowing like two coals in the dark. The forest hushed, waiting for Adani and Kihine to answer the riddle. "I eat everything, yet I am never full. I drink everything, yet I am always thirsty. What am I?" Adani's chest tightened. Her mind raced through possibilities. She thought of the stream, of the spirit, of the many dangers that had tested them. Beside her, Kihine whispered, "Could it be a beast? Or fire? Fire eats and drinks." Her eyes lit up. Fire. Course. Fire devours wood, food, even homes, but it never says enough. With trembling courage, Adani stepped forward. "The answer is fire." The trickster burst into loud laughter that shook the leaves of the trees. For a moment, Adani feared she had answered wrongly. But then, with a sharp clap of his hands, the trickster vanished into smoke. His voice echoed faintly. "You are clever, girl. Go on, but beware. The greatest fire is not in the forest, but in men's hearts." Kihine and Adani exchanged uneasy glances. The path cleared before them, leading deeper into the forest. They walked for what felt like hours until finally, they reached a wide clearing. At its center stood an ancient tree, its bark carved with strange markings, and at its roots lay a drum unlike any they had ever seen. It was large, its hide darkened with age, and it seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Adani's heart leapt. "The sacred drum," she whispered. But as they stepped forward, the ground trembled. The tree shivered, and from its roots slithered dark shadows that twisted into shapes of snakes. The snakes hissed, circling them, their eyes glowing red. Kihine grabbed his small hammer, ready to fight, but Adani remembered Mama Ayabo's words. "The drum shakes lies and reveals truth. It answers only to a pure heart." Adani raised her hands and spoke boldly, her voice echoing in the clearing. "We come not for ourselves, but for the children of our village. We come to bring light where a false shepherd has planted fear. If the drum belongs to truth, let it be ours." For a tense moment, the snakes coiled tighter, their tongues flickering. Then suddenly, the air shimmered, and they dissolved into smoke. The clearing grew quiet, and the drum pulsed with a deep, steady rhythm, as if recognizing her words. Adani stepped forward and touched it. The drum was warm beneath her hands, vibrating with power. Slowly, she lifted the carved sticks lying beside it and struck once. Boom! The sound shook the forest, rolling like thunder, and in that instant, Adani saw a vision. She saw Pastor Bamadil kneeling inside the church, not praying but chanting before the same wooden box she had glimpsed. Inside the box were bones, tiny and fragile, glowing faintly. They were not the remains of animals, but of children. Her stomach turned and her eyes filled with tears. This was the truth. He had deceived them, using fear to hide his evil deeds. The drum had revealed it. When the vision faded, Adani collapsed to her knees, trembling. Kihine caught her, fear etched on his face. "What did you see?" he whispered. Adani's voice shook as she answered. "The pastor, he is no shepherd. He has been feeding on the lives of children. That is why he demands more." Kihine's face hardened with rage. "Then we must expose him." Adani nodded, though her body quivered. "Yes, Tomorrow night, when he gathers the children again, we must beat this drum. Let the truth thunder through the village. They carried the sacred drum carefully, step by step, back through the forest. But even as they reached the stream and crossed safely, a dunny felt the weight of dread. She now carried the truth, but truth is dangerous when spoken against a man who holds power through fear. As the village lights flickered in the distance, a dunny whispered to herself, "If we fail tomorrow, no child will ever be safe again." And as she stepped back into Okodo, she didn't notice the pair of eyes watching from the shadows, the eyes of someone who had followed them back from the forest. The night air in Okodo was heavy with silence. The moon hung low, and shadows crawled along the walls of the mud houses. Adunni and Kahind slipped quietly back into the village, the sacred drum hidden beneath a cloth they carried between them. Neither spoke, for both knew the weight of what they carried, their only weapon against Pastor Bamadil. But what they did not know was that eyes had been watching. As they laid the drum carefully inside Mama Ayabo's hut, the old woman gasped when she saw it. "You found it," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and awe. "The ancestors guided your steps. But now you must be careful. A cornered snake is most deadly." Adunni nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Tomorrow night, when the pastor gathers the children again, we will beat the drum. The truth must be revealed." Mama Ayabo placed her wrinkled hand on Adunni's cheek. "My child, you are brave. But truth can burn the one who carries it. Remember this. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand even while trembling." That night, Adunni tried to sleep, but her eyes refused to close. Her father's amulet was gone, and the vision of the children's bones haunted her mind. What if the villagers refused to believe her? What if the pastor turned them against her? What if he silenced her forever? Just before dawn, a scream shattered the air. Adunni and Kahind rushed outside to find a crowd forming near the church. A young mother was wailing uncontrollably, beating her chest. Her child, the same boy Adunni had seen trembling on the altar, was gone. "They took him," she cried. "The pastor said he must remain in the church overnight for cleansing, but now he is nowhere to be found." Gasps and fearful murmurs spread through the crowd. Some whispered curses, others fell to their knees begging God for mercy. The pastor appeared soon after, his face calm, his robes neat, as if nothing had happened. "My people," he said smoothly, "do not be troubled. The boy has been taken up as a sacrifice to save us all. This is the will of God." Many nodded, accepting his words, but Adunni could no longer stay silent. She pushed through the crowd, her voice trembling but loud. "No, that is not God's will. You are lying to us, Pastor. You are hiding behind God's name to do evil." The crowd gasped. Kahind stepped quickly to her side, his fists clenched. Mama Ayabo stood at the edge, her eyes burning with pride and worry. Pastor Bamadil's smile vanished. His eyes narrowed into slits. "You dare accuse me, child. You dare put yourself above the word of God. I dare to speak the truth." Adunni shouted, her whole body shaking. "I have seen what lies inside your box. I know what you have done to the children of this village." A heavy silence fell. The villagers turned from Adunni to the pastor, their faces torn between fear and doubt. The pastor laughed coldly. "Lies," he spat. "This girl is possessed. She has gone into the forest and brought back spirits to confuse you. If you listen to her, you bring curses on us all." Before Adunni could reply, two strong men from the crowd, loyal to the pastor, grabbed her arms. Kahind tried to fight them off, but another man struck him down. "Bind her," the pastor commanded. "We will cleanse this child of her demons before she destroys us." The villagers, frightened and confused, obeyed. Adunni struggled, but ropes tied her wrists. She looked helplessly at Mama Ayabo, who shook her head slowly. "Not yet," the old woman mouthed silently. "The drum. Wait for the drum." Adunni's heart pounded. She knew this was her darkest moment. She was bound, the villagers turned against her, and the pastor's power seemed greater than ever. The sacred drum was hidden, but without it, she had no proof, no weapon, no hope. As the pastor raised his hands, preparing to declare judgment over her, Adunni closed her eyes. But deep in her chest, a voice whispered, "The truth will thunder. Be ready." And as the church bell tolled, echoing through the night, someone, hidden in the shadows, slipped into Mama Ayabo's hut where the sacred drum lay waiting. The night of judgment had come. The villagers crowded around the church, torches flickering, fear gripping their faces. Adunni stood at the center, her wrists bound tightly with ropes, her eyes swollen from tears but still blazing with courage. Beside her, Kihind nursed a bruise on his head, forced to kneel under the watch of two strong men. Pastor Bamadil raised his hands high, his white robe glowing under the torchlight. "My people," he declared, his voice booming, "this girl is possessed by evil spirits. She has dared to question the authority of God and your shepherd. Tonight we must cleanse her before the curse consumes us all." The crowd murmured nervously. Some nodded, but others looked uneasy. Mama Ayabo stood at the back, her old eyes burning with fire. She whispered under her breath, praying the plan would not fail. Then, just as Pastor Bamadil stretched out his hand to begin his so-called cleansing ritual, a sound split the night. Boom! The villagers froze. The ground shook lightly, and the torches flickered. Everyone turned toward the direction of Mama Ayabo's hut. Boom! Boom! The sacred drum thundered again, louder this time, echoing through the entire village. The sound was not ordinary. It carried a strange power. With each beat, fear seemed to break, and eyes began to widen as if seeing clearly for the first time. Adunni gasped. Someone had found the courage to beat the drum. But who? The pastor's face twisted with rage. "No. Stop that sound. Do not listen. It is the devil trying to deceive you." He shouted desperately, but his voice was drowned by another thunderous strike of the drum. Boom! And then it happened. Before the eyes of the villagers, a vision appeared in the air, shimmering like smoke above the church. They saw Pastor Bamadil kneeling before his wooden box, chanting in secret. They saw the bones of children glowing inside. They saw his eyes shining with greed and hunger, not holiness. The crowd gasped. Mothers screamed, clutching their children. Fathers who once bowed to him now stared in horror. "It's true," one whispered. "All this time," another muttered. "He lied to us," someone shouted angrily. Adunni felt her heart pound with both relief and fear. The truth had been revealed, but the pastor was not a man who would surrender easily. Pastor Bamadil's face contorted. His calm smile was gone, replaced by pure hatred. "You fools," he roared. "You think you can defy me? I hold your souls in my hand." He lunged toward Adunni, his fingers curved like claws. But just then Kihind, with one last burst of strength, broke free from his captors and threw himself in front of her. The two collided, falling to the ground. The villagers shouted in panic, unsure whether to run or fight. "Seize him!" one of the men loyal to the pastor shouted. But others hesitated, torn now that they had seen the truth with their own eyes. In the chaos, Mama Ayabo appeared, carrying the sacred drum herself. Her frail arms lifted the sticks, and she struck it with all her might. Boom! 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 The sound roared like thunder, and Pastor Bamadil screamed, clutching his head. His body shook violently as though the lies inside him were being ripped out by force. But even as he staggered to his feet, his eyes still burned with fury. "If I fall," he spat, "I will take this whole village with me." He reached into his robe and pulled out a small gourd, its mouth sealed with black cloth. Dark smoke began to seep from it, swirling into the night sky. The villagers screamed as the smoke grew, spreading like a storm, threatening to swallow them all. Adunni's eyes widened. She realized the pastor was calling on his final weapon, the curse he had spoken of. The sacred drum had revealed the truth, but now she and the villagers faced a greater danger, the pastor's wrath unleashed in full. The smoke from Pastor Bamadiel's gourd rose like a black cloud, twisting and curling in the air. It hissed like 1,000 snakes and spread quickly, covering the churchyard. Children screamed, mothers wailed, fathers stumbled back in fear. "Stay still!" Mama Ayabo shouted above the chaos, her old voice surprisingly strong. "The drum has revealed the truth. Now we must finish what we started." Adani coughed, struggling to breathe in the choking smoke. Her hands still bound, she turned desperately to Kahind. With shaking fingers, he tore the ropes from her wrists. "Adani," he cried. "The drum, it answers to you. You must strike it again." Adani grabbed the sticks from Mama Ayabo, her heart racing. The smoke pressed around her, whispering lies in her ears. "You are too small. You will fail. The pastor is stronger than you." But Adani remembered her father's words long ago, spoken when she was just a little girl afraid of the dark. "Courage is standing even when your knees shake." She raised the sticks high. "For the children," she cried. And she struck the drum with all her strength. Boom! 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 The sound rolled like thunder, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The black smoke screamed as if alive, curling back, shrinking under the power of truth. Villagers gasped as the lies that bound their hearts shattered like clay pots. Pastor Bamadiel staggered, his eyes wide with terror. The calm mask he always wore was gone. He fell to his knees, clutching his chest. "No," he cried. "They were mine, the power was mine." Adani struck the drum again, louder, stronger. Boom! This time, the wooden box hidden in the church burst open by itself. Bones spilled across the altar, small, fragile, undeniable. The villagers saw everything clearly. "No more lies," one of the fathers shouted, fury burning in his eyes. "You fed on our children," another cried. "He is no shepherd. He is a wolf," Mama Ayabo declared. The people surged forward. Men and women together rose against Pastor Bamadiel, no longer afraid. They tore the gourd from his hand and shattered it on the ground. The black smoke vanished into nothing. The pastor, weakened and exposed, tried to run, but the villagers surrounded him. For the first time he was the one trembling. "Bind him," Mama Ayabo commanded. "He shall face the judgment of the people whose trust he betrayed." The men tied him with ropes, stronger than any he had ever placed on them. His power was gone, and the mask of holiness he had worn for so long lay broken forever. Adani fell to her knees, exhausted but filled with relief. The sacred drum lay before her, its surface now still, its duty fulfilled. Kahind placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. "You saved us," he whispered. But Adani shook her head. "We saved ourselves. All it took was courage to see the truth." The next morning, the village of Okodo gathered in the square. The pastor, bound and disgraced, was cast out forever. In his place, the people chose to return to the old ways, where leadership was shared, where no single man could hold their lives in his hands. Mama Ayabo lifted her voice to the people. "Let this be a lesson," she said. "Do not give your trust blindly, even to the man who wears holy robes. Watch with both eyes, for wolves hide among sheep." The villagers nodded, their hearts heavy but wiser. And as children ran once more through the square, laughter filling the air, Adani felt the weight of her sacrifice. She had lost her father's amulet, but she had gained something greater, the safety of her people and the courage to stand for truth. From that day on, whenever the church bell rang, the villagers remembered the night the sacred drum thundered. They whispered to one another, "You will think twice before entering a church after hearing what this pastor did." And the story of Adani's courage was passed down through generations, reminding everyone that true faith shines only where truth and justice live.